What about Diontae and Claypool?
Oh, man, shout out to Diontae, too, first off, man. It was great to see him
OTA
out
debut.
there. It was great to see him out there. Full report, I think that he looks phenomenal in terms of shape. Not overweight, not underweight. I still think he moves extremely well. Now, granted, he wasn't doing a crazy amount of stuff, and that was smart because when you're first getting back, you need to get acclimated. Whether you've been traveling or whether you've been local, but either way, you haven't been playing football. Drills, working out on your own, that's not football. Big difference. So to me, I think part of it was the team telling him, like, look, man, you're not going to be doing all this. You're going to do a couple there, a couple there, some drill work, and that's that. But from what I was seeing with him, I thought that he was still moving extremely fluid. I still thought he was catching the ball good with his hands. Very similar to what we talked about last year when he first came back. We were like, yo, you can tell like he's been working, or you can tell this has been a focal point for him. I think that that's the same case because just watching him, it wasn't as crisp and as fluid as George Pickens, Calvin, and the other guys that I named, but I thought that it was still very good in terms of seeing him snatching that ball out the air. And for me, I just need to see him continue to do that. If he continues to do that, everything takes care of itself.
You're saying that not as an indictment on Diontae,
no, not at all.
More of how impressed you are with Pickens?
It was more of a compliment for those guys. Yeah. It was
like
more...
Here's my question. Did Diontae look more crisp with it last year as opposed, or is
Correct.
this just how he is?
Yeah, I think this is where he's at now. I thought last year was the big jump for him, whereas I don't think we're going to noticeably see a crazy jump from his hands last year to this year, unless you're talking about like the critical moments where he had some drops. Obviously, we respect that and we understand that. That's part of the reason why we're so hesitant to pay out that type of money to him. But in the sense of when you watched him catch the ball last year versus the year prior to, it was a difference. We could all noticeably see that. And I think that that's why it's not going to be a moment where I look at him or any of us look at him and say, oh yeah, his hands are way better this year. Unless we're gauging it on the situations that the drops might occur in, because it is a difference between you dropping the ball on first down and you dropping the ball in the first quarter versus you dropping the ball in the fourth quarter or in a playoff game. I think that they're not weighted the same, and they shouldn't be because the moments do matter. But that's the part where I don't think we're not going to be able to tell that difference until it's a moment like that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Claypool then.
I thought today was a really good practice for Claypool. I thought that he looked good in terms of his route running. He didn't have any drops. Good hands catching as well. It's weird though when I'm watching him, because when you watch him run, he's big speed, but I keep getting caught in this trap of looking at how George Pickens' speed, and George just looks faster to me. So it makes me want, I'm like, all right, is he chilling right here? Or, you know what I mean? Like, what's the tempo? What's the cadence right here? Because George just looks a little bit faster to me. But I thought as a whole, man, Chase definitely had a really good day today, man. I thought, like I said, man, in terms of the catching, in terms of him just taking on that leadership role, you can definitely see it.
He wasn't BSing us.
No. Like you can definitely see the guys go to him. He's the guy that's, hey man, all right, they staying after. He's one of the main guys out there staying after. All right, they're coming out early to do whatever. He's one of the main guys out. He's doing those things the right way. So I do see the leadership part. I don't know how good the communication is or what he's saying, because I can't hear that. I'm not privy to it. But from what I am seeing, you can definitely notice the him taking, that next step in terms of being that type of player now.
Now, I had another question with Diontae Johnson.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily about his play, but with him being back at these OTAs, no shot we see any more disgruntlement throughout the rest of the offseason. He's a lock to show up to training camp, you think, then?
So, excuse me. With the situation now, you have to remember, Diontae didn't have legitimate leverage because the Steelers still have him under contract for this year, and they can tag him after that. So this was what we call the soft protest, right? If you don't show up, it's not mandatory, so it doesn't cost you anything. It's not as harsh as you saying, hey, I demand a trade if you don't give me a deal, but it gets their attention. I think for him, he understands that, hey, he still has to play. Regardless of if they pay him or not, he is going to have to go out there and play and be his best self. So I think at the end of the day, you have that internal conversation, but you realize I need to work anyways. It's less noise if I show up. It's less risk if I show up. We talked about that as well. You get injured on your own, that's on you.
Maybe you listen to the podcast.
I mean, or information get out there to you, man. Trust me, it gets out. It definitely does. I daily. We're daily when I'm down there, I'm approached by, hey man, hey, what's up with that dude? You got her? I heard about. So yeah, we're out there. We're making a little noise.
We talked Diontae Johnson through it.
We're making a little noise, but like I said, with Diontae though, I just think that now he understands that. Hey, look, man, the money is going to come whether it's here or elsewhere, but I have to be ready to go. I cannot sit out the whole season, and you're working with new quarterbacks. So I think all of those things factor into this thing, but he still wants his money, and you should definitely want it. To me, I prefer this method a little bit better just because I've seen it work with AB. Now, we could take that for what it is. I've seen it work with TJ. We could take that for what it is. We know those are two outlier players. Those are two at best of their position players in the league. So obviously that plays into this, but those dudes, they showed up. Mike Hilton, he showed up. Now, granted, he didn't get paid here, but he still ended up getting paid very, very well to go to Cincinnati, but he showed up. I think of the L. Bell situation, and it's like, he still got his money without a doubt, but we could all see where it's been different for him since him having that year where he sat out and didn't do any of the stuff. I also thought of the year prior to that where he had the slow start in a sense because he didn't show up until week 1. Remember, no OTAs, no training camp. And I just felt that, man, he kind of robbed himself because when he did do those things, we saw why he was so gifted and why he was so dominant from start to finish. Whereas on those other years, you know, where he was either missing a portion of it, it took him time to get up to speed. I just think for Diontae, he understands that, hey, man, if I don't want to repeat that, I want to do this. Let me do this. Let me show up. Let me work. And I think that's going to only benefit him in the long run, man. Yeah. Not saying that either side is bad in terms of showing up versus not showing up, but I've had teammates, even when I was in Buffalo, Jarius Byrd, he was a Pro Bowler and everything up there. He wanted to get his money, contract dispute. He ends up waiting to show up. When he gets there, he's a little bit heavier than he's normal. He ends up having hamstring issues, ends up, you know, dealing with that type of stuff. And then it's like you rob yourself of having the season that you want because you're taking the first month to get your body in football shape, which is very different than just workout shape. And even though he also got paid, he went to New Orleans, I think it was the year following, and he got compensated. He was never the same player. And I just always think of those moments, the guys that did show up versus the guys that did not show up, and how those trajectories work, even when they don't stay in that place to get paid. Mike Hilton is still doing his thing. Imagine if he would have played hardball and just didn't show up. How does that play out for him? I think of that, but he did show up, and now I'm like, yo, he's still being very successful. Just played in the Super Bowl. So those are some of the things that when I'm thinking of Diontae, I'm like, I like the fact that he is here, even though he is still pissed and should be pissed. You want your money. You should always feel like you earned your money. I just think that those are some of the moments where it's like, just think big picture, bro. Think big picture.